Hey everybody, Dave here, and I am back for the second part of the GM overview for the Gatewalkers Adventure Path for Pathfinder 2nd Edition. As always, there are a few things I want to cover before we dive into the full content of this video. First of those is this is obviously a part 2 video, so make sure you have viewed part 1 before you view this video. Also, I would like to remind everybody that there are heavy-duty spoilers included in this video, so if you are a player of Gatewalkers or might potentially be one in the future, stop watching now. You're just ruining the fun for yourself and potentially your other players. So I love all of my viewers and all of my subscribers, but this is one for the GMs. Also, another reminder that I mentioned at the end of the part 1 video that's worth revisiting here is just to remind you that I have not played this adventure path. And I have not GM'd it either. I have only read the books. Therefore, I may not be in the best position to talk about certain things like encounter balance. But what I will do in this video is share with you some of the things that I have read and seen online in the subreddit, the official forums, and so forth from people who have played and have GM'd it and what they are saying. So first off, let's talk about some of the things that I liked about the Gatewalkers Adventure Path. First of all, I thought there were some fun twists and turns. If you have been viewing my GM overviews, a lot of the adventure paths and single adventures that I have reviewed for this channel lately have all been kind of very safe and very by the book, color by numbers, not a bad adventure, but just adventures that didn't have any shocks or surprises or narrative twists and turns. And this one's not like that. This one, there are definitely some surprise events, some twists and turns, and different locations that the players will visit that I did not expect to see. Now, as I go on, you'll see that some of those twists and turns may not land the way that I would have hoped that they did, and some of the locations that are visited are ones that perhaps may have been better placed in other adventures and other adventure paths, but I'll hit those items as I get into more of my dislikes and words of caution or concern. Also, I like the fact that the Deviant Powers are being used prominently in this adventure path. This is another one of those areas that there's a little bit of an asterisk, as the deviant abilities have not been as well received by some of the players as I would have liked to have seen, but I like the fact that they are incorporating them and giving them a place of prominence in the story. And I think anytime you give a player a fun new ability, a fun new power, that's an exciting moment for that player. So the inclusion of the Deviant system and the Deviant powers, I think, are great, and they fit into the overarching narrative of this adventure path as well. Along with there being a few interesting locations and some fun twists and turns to the narrative, I also like that there are some fun NPCs for the players to interact with. Hubert Hedge comes to mind. Hubert Hedge is a sentient talking hedgehog from the first world. He is a fey creature, and that's just like a fun little concept and a fun character to throw with the players to interact with, and that's just one example. There are others. I guess the key to this notation of an advantage for the adventure path is there are a number of NPCs that players can meet with, can interact with, can develop relationships, and so there is a little bit more of a social layer to this adventure path than perhaps some of the others, like Abomination Vaults, for example. I very much like that adventure path, but it's one that is very much steering towards dungeon crawls and not so much relationship building with NPCs. In this adventure path, there are a number of NPCs I think are going to be great assets and tools for the more socially minded players out there. And I'll go out there and say I like Sakuachi. I know that's a hot topic, which we will talk about a little more. But the young seer that the players meet in book two and who plays a very, very prominent role in this story, um, I overall like. Now, implementation probably could be better, but again, just I think there's some good NPCs here for the players to meet and interact with. Also something that I like is that it doesn't fall into typical tropes for first level adventure. If you watched my videos on Rust Hinge, this is something I talked about there as well, where you have first level characters, but they're not fighting goblins, kobolds, or clearing rats out of a cellar. They are doing more interesting and potentially more heroic activities right out the gate at first level. In this case, they're dealing with a group of druids. Now, I will mention that even though I see that as an advantage, I have seen online a few people who see that as a disadvantage. That they view something like taking on a druid circle should be something that requires higher level players. It should be something reserved for a more experienced party. So your mileage may vary with that. But for me, I see that as a more interesting narrative, even though it is for beginning first level characters. So those are largely the concepts and items that I overall liked about this adventure path. So now let's talk about some of the dislikes. And I will also say, just like I feel like a broken record, I say this every time. Some of the things that I label as a dislike or an area of caution may be something that I feel like isn't going to be great for my players at my table. But this is very subjective. So you have to think about your players in your game. I guarantee you, my players are not like yours, and yours are not like mine. So this is less of a list of objectively wrong and awful things, and more stuff that you should think about and consider if you are wanting to GM this adventure path with your players. And I will say, like, the word of the day is going to be agency. I will probably be talking about the agency of players and the agency of characters within the narrative quite a bit throughout all this. So, without bearing the lead too much, I'm going to get into what I felt like was my number one area of concern for this adventure path. And looking online, forums, the subreddit, it feels like I'm not alone in this. And that is, there feels like a little bit of a bait and switch going on between what the adventure path advertises that it is versus what it truly is. The marketing surrounding this, the blurb on the back of the book and on the website and all, it presents this as being the paranormal investigation adventure path. And if you're interested in the occult and getting involved in a paranormal investigation, then this is going to be the adventure for you. And the reality is, even though, yes, the catalyst for the story, the inciting incident, is very much rooted in a paranormal mystery, and the ultimate goal of the adventure path is to solve that mystery and challenge a massive paranormal threat. There's really not much investigation, paranormal or otherwise, that happens within this adventure path. As one person online put it, they said that they were expecting to play X-Files in the Pathfinder universe, and they ended up playing Indiana Jones in the Pathfinder universe. And that seems to be a concept that's echoed by a lot of people out there. In other words, this is not an adventure path that is going to give you the paranormal investigation feel of Call of Cthulhu or Delta Green or something like that. It may start off with the inciting incident, and the beginning is you're working with a paranormal investigator to solve the mystery of the missing moment, but this really plays out more as a long journey. It's not something you're investigating, it's a journey you're going on, and you are traveling. It's a globe trotting or world hopping, and literally world hopping, in order to get you to the parts of book three that ultimately reveal the truths of the mystery behind the missing moment and everything. So, for example, one of the pieces of spoiler material I omitted from my first video is that at the end of book one, um, during book one, you go to a part of the first world, and then you return back to the material plane. And I think in that video, I just kind of hand waved it and said, "You take a very, very, a very, very inconvenient route to get home." Well, that inconvenient route involves you going to the planet Casterville, home of the elves. So you engage in the cosmology of the Pathfinder universe, and you travel to another planet, and you have some adventure there before you come back to the material plane. And that's where book two begins, with you appearing in the city of Skywatch and an observatory. And from there, you travel from there to a river, and from the river you travel to a haunted graveyard of ships, and then you have another piece of travel on a river, and then you come to a city in Mendev where you are accused of consorting with demons and devils and fiends. And so basically book two, I think, is my biggest concern, but it's more about the journey and hitting these set pieces, even though some of the set pieces are very cool, instead of actually doing investigations. And this does kind of feel, especially in book two, as a little bit of um, filler material, I guess. And this filler material is something that's bugged me about the 6-book adventure paths. If you've been following the channel for a while, you know that I personally am no longer running 6-book adventure paths, because it always feels to me like there's 3 books of actual material, and then there's always 3 books that are just there to kill time. And I don't like that. And that's kind of the way, especially book 2 in this adventure path feels to me. Is it cool to fight ghost pirates? Yes, that sounds cool. It sounds fun. I think it will play out well. But does battling those ghost pirates have anything to do with the larger story of a psychic whale that's a great old one, or cosmic horror powerful being imprisoned at the North Pole, psychically dominating people all over the world to do its bidding? No, that battle with the ghost pirates is cool, but it doesn't play into the overarching story at all. And I'm not saying that everything has to directly impact and contribute to the overall story, but like in book 2, it just really feels like a large chunk is just nothing but a series of obstacles to be overcome that could have been inserted into any generic fantasy story, um, and not really have a place in a story that is marketed as being about paranormal investigation. The other part about the sort of the bait and switch I feel with the paranormal investigation piece, or the lack thereof, is, are there parts of the story where the players are called upon to perform investigations? Yes, but they have very minor consequences to the overall story. And ultimately, when you get to book 3, from my reading, and I encourage GMs and players out there, let me know in the comments if you have other experiences. But from my reading, it really felt like the players don't have agency in solving the mystery of the missing moment. It's more that it's all revealed to them, regardless of it's a plot point. It's a beat in the story that they are given information. Is not something that they earn through investigation. Um, so that was just largely a concern that if you or your players are expecting this to be the paranormal investigation story, you're setting yourself up for disappointment. Um, and this is more of a more about the journey, more about globetrotting and traveling to interesting and engaging set pieces, but those set pieces don't really interact with a paranormal story. So make sure that you understand that before you introduce this to your players. Also, with regards to concerns about agency and one of the biggest complaints is the character of Sakuachi, which I mentioned earlier. I like her. I think she is kind of a walking MacGuffin, so to speak. Um, but I think she's an interesting character for the players to interact with. The big problem though with Sakuachi and her traveling group is she's really the hero of the story, and especially through book two and portions of book three as well. The players take a back seat and have even less agency in the story. Once they meet her, I suppose the story is supposed to impart upon them that they're united to her by fate, but she is the person who is at the center of the story. Our heroes cease to be the protagonists, and it really becomes a very long escort mission where they are following her directives, and a lot of them are based on uh, because I say so, or because of the stars, or because I can see the future. Trust me, we need to do these things. Um, it has and again less and less agency that the players have on what they're doing, and there's a lot of people online who just really do not like that. Now, I will say my players, I think, would probably bond with Sakuachi and would have a little to no problem with the notion that they're not the primary heroes of the story. It's their goal to escort her and assist her on her journey. I don't see it as a major problem with my players. But again, my players are not your players. Be very aware that there's a lot of people out there who really did not like playing through these long stretches of the campaign where their job is to escort Sakuachi, and not just her, but she has a it's not she has her own little party with her as well. Um, which again, more NPCs for you to interact with. As I said earlier, downside is less and less player agency. One of the frequent suggestions I saw online to help with this issue of Sakuachi being the star is to actually de-age her. She's kind of a young adult. She's an adult in the story the way it's scripted, but I saw probably 4 or 5 different GMs who have run this suggest aging her down to about 13. And then it seems a little more clear why she needs protection and assistance from the player party. And some other just general words of caution. There are a lot of people who report that the treehouse in book one, the treehouse of horrors, where you fight all of these druids, is super, super lethal for a first level party, especially the traps and hazards there. In particular, there is a rope bridge that is 50 feet above ground. And once a medium sized creature steps in the center of this rope bridge, it's rigged to give out and break. And so, if your entire party is walking across it at once and it breaks, conceivably, your entire party is going to plummet 50 feet. And 50 feet of fall damage is 25 points of bludgeoning damage. And for a first player party, that could be a TPK right off the bat. Now there are, if your character is within 10 feet of the edge when it breaks, I think you're allowed a grab and edge action, a reaction to prevent yourself from falling. But still, lots of people reported online that location in general and that bridge in particular was more deadly than they would want, especially for brand new players. If this is your first introduction to Pathfinder, that may be a little rough for you. Also, this is an adventure where, again, it's more about globetrotting and journey than it is about paranormal investigation. As such, the players are always marching towards Mordor, so to speak. And what that means is there's no stable hub for them to return to rest and heal and do downtime activities. There are like 3 major cities spread out through the campaign, but there's minimal downtime that is scripted into the campaign. And there's not a lot of opportunity for players to trade, to sell off gear that they don't want to use and buy gear that they would, and so on and so forth. So because of this, there's a lot of GMs out there who are recommending you use automatic bonus progression with this adventure path. So for those who are not familiar with automatic bonus progression, you can learn about it in the Game Mastery Guide. It is one of the optional variant systems, and basically what the automatic bonus progression system does is it removes all of the bonuses from your equipment. You no longer get an item bonus from a magic sword. You no longer get an item bonus to skills for a certain trinket you're wearing. And instead, whenever you level up, you get those bonuses just baked into the leveling up process. But I don't want to get too deep into automatic bonus progression here, other than to say, be aware, there's very limited downtime that is baked into this. There's very limited opportunities for players to go to market and buy and sell. Therefore, a lot of GMs who have run this do recommend automatic bonus progression. Also, I want to mention that as I read comments from other people out there, it seemed like the deviant abilities, a little bit of a mixed bag as far as how much of an impact they made. Some GMs reported that the usability of the different deviant powers is a pretty vast difference. There's some deviant abilities that player takes that have effects that are commonly usable, and they use their powers all the time. But there are other players whose abilities that they took may have been more situational, to the point that there are GMs reporting that players completely forgot they even had deviant abilities because it was so infrequent that they could be used. Also, be aware that there were some GMs out there who reported that there weren't enough different deviant abilities and deviant powers and feats, and they just wish there were more out there. Not much we can do about that right now, but who knows, maybe some more will be released in the future. So there were a couple of questions that came through the part 1 comment section that I want to address. Really only one of them am I going to address now. I think the most of them I've already addressed in some fashion, just by talking about the sort of bait and switch feel and concerns with Sakuachi. But the other question that came in was, how does this adventure path stack up against Sky King's Tomb? I know they are different, but my group and I are going from D&D 5e to Pathfinder 2e and are trying to decide between the two. So again, this is very subjective. So I don't like to objectively say one is, quote, better than another. Given that this person is specifically talking about a group of players that are new to Pathfinder 2nd Edition, I think that in and of itself would lead me to say Sky King's Tomb might be the better bet. That is a more traditional role-playing Pathfinder experience. Not a lot of twists and turns, not a lot of exciting highs and lows, nothing fancy going on with that narrative. It is kind of a paint-by-numbers sort of adventure path. But it does give some introduction to the history of Galarian, especially with the dwarves, and there's not much in the narrative to trip you up. I think that's going to be a more new player and or new GM friendly experience. Whereas Gatewalkers, it's weird, and it's weird by design, and that's what you should want in a paranormal adventure. So my recommendation, if you're looking between either Gatewalkers or Sky King's Tomb for specifically new players, I would lean more towards Sky King's Tomb. So there you have it. Kind of a rambling nutshell of my various thoughts and observations of Gatewalkers. Overall, I think it is okay. I wish the second book was more connected to the overarching plot. I wish that it had more actual paranormal investigation, that the players actually did more discovery through investigation and not so much solving every problem with violence and fisticuffs. But overall, I don't think it's a horrible experience either, but you absolutely need to understand that this is not an adventure path about paranormal investigation. It is more about globetrotting. As that one person put it, is less X-Files and more Indiana Jones. And make sure that you are feeling good about your players sort of taking a backseat in narrative agency to Sakuachi as it becomes more about them escorting and protecting her on her divinely mandated mission than it is targeting their heroics. That's an area that I think some groups are going to be fine with and others wouldn't be. If you have any other questions, please leave those in the comments below. If you have any additional insight, I'd love to hear from more players and GMs who have actually experienced this and what your thoughts are. Please leave those in the comments as well. And as always, I want to take a quick moment to say thank you to everybody out there who supports me and this channel, whether that's by clicking the like button, subscribing to the channel, subscribing to the Patreon, sharing the video with your friends. I really appreciate everything you folks do. And with that, thanks for watching. Take care and happy gaming.